You've probably held one of these objects before, but you had no idea it could kill you. A child's toy, a household decoration, something sitting quietly on your desk right now. Innocent, harmless, safe, until you learn what it was really designed for. Tonight, we're peeling back the smiling surface of everyday objects and revealing the disturbing, twisted, and sometimes deadly purposes hiding underneath. Some were weapons disguised as toys, some were experiments disguised as inventions, and some were traps built for people who never saw them coming. And trust me, number 6 will change how you see this forever. Number 1. The teddy bear that was never meant to be hugged. Let's start with something soft, cute, comforting, a teddy bear, the universal symbol of childhood innocence, and also one of the most cleverly engineered tools for surveillance and manipulation ever created. But not the way you think, because before teddy bears became bedtime friends, one particular version became a weapon, disguised as a gift. It began in the early 1900s, just as stuffed toys were exploding in popularity. Every child wanted one, every family bought one, and every spy? Well, they realized something big. No one ever suspects a toy, so intelligence agencies, yes, actual government agencies, started modifying teddy bears in ways no parent would ever imagine. Inside the belly of a bear that looked just like the one sitting on your shelf, they hid small glass capsules, silent, invisible, deadly. If the wrong person held the wrong bear or squeezed it too tightly, those capsules shattered. And what leaked out wasn't stuffing, it was powder. Not the cute, shake it and sneeze kind. This was the kind that ended conversations permanently. Spies used them for courier drops, silent sabotage, and even for slipping items across borders, where no officer wanted to be remembered as the person who cut open a child's toy. The brilliance and horror was the same. Nobody would ever suspect a teddy bear, and it gets worse, because once this idea caught on, other groups saw opportunity. Criminal networks, smugglers, anyone who needed a way to hide something in plain sight. Some teddy bears carried contraband, some hid coded messages, some had tiny hand-cranked cameras stitched into a button eye. Turn the head just slightly, and the bear recorded everything it could see. Imagine being watched by a stuffed animal and never realizing it. But the darkest version didn't involve crime, or espionage, or secret drops behind enemy lines. It involved parents. Normal parents, people who thought they were buying a harmless toy. See, in the 1930s, some factories used a cheap, highly flammable stuffing material called kapok fiber. Light, soft, and incredibly dangerous. All it took was a spark, a cigarette ember, a little static. 1 second the teddy bear was sitting on a bed, the next, it was a fireball. Entire safety regulations were written because of these bears, because so many parents trusted the cuteness, but not the chemistry. And that's the theme of all these objects. We trust what looks harmless, but teddy bears weren't done leaving their mark on the darker side of history. During the Cold War, engineers created bears that could listen, not metaphorically, literally. Microphone in the ear, battery pack in the spine, receiver hidden inside a matching bear in another room. It looked like a gift. It was a gift, but it wasn't given to children. It was given to targets, so the giver could hear every word whispered in the room after that. Some were used for hostage negotiations, some for interrogations, some for espionage, so deep that even the person using the bear didn't know who the recordings were going to. That's how invisible these operations were. A child's toy became the perfect disguise, a perfect shield, a perfect trap. And today, the idea hasn't died. It just evolved. Now we have smart toys, Wi-Fi connected bears, Bluetooth plushies, voice-activated companions for toddlers. Cute, right? Except cybersecurity researchers found that many of these toys, manufactured by companies you've heard of, can be hacked remotely, quietly, instantly. A stranger could speak through the bear, listen through its mic, track the device it's paired with. A toy designed to comfort a child can now expose an entire household, all because it looks innocent, all because nobody questions a smile sewn onto soft fabric. But teddy bears are just the beginning, because the next object isn't fluffy, it isn't cute, and it wasn't used to hide secrets, it was used to destroy them. Number 2, the beautiful vase designed to erase the truth. Let's step away from toys and move to something elegant, decorative, harmless, a vase. The kind you'd see on your grandmother's dining table, painted, fragile, a simple piece of home decor that holds flowers and collects dust. But in ancient China, Japan, Persia, and parts of Europe, some vases had a far darker purpose, not to display flowers, not to beautify a room, but to destroy evidence. Because hundreds of years ago, people didn't have shredders, or encrypted drives, or secure burn bins. What they had were vases, but not just any vases. These were disappearing vases, ceramics engineered with a secret. They could melt when filled with the right substance, water, certain oils, even fermented liquid. The moment it touched the inside, the vase collapsed into a soft, pulpy sludge. Whatever was inside it, messages, seals, documents, maps, was instantly erased, gone forever. It was the ancient equivalent of hitting delete permanently. Imagine a royal messenger riding into a city with a harmless vase. He gets stopped by guards. They search his bags. They inspect the vase. Nothing, just decoration. But inside that hollow base, sealed with wax, a scroll that could start a war or end one. But if the messenger sensed danger, all he had to do was crack the wax, pour a small vial of liquid inside, and watch the message dissolve right there, right in front of the guards. No ashes, no scraps, no proof anything ever existed. A perfect crime scene sanitizer, built centuries before forensic science. But that wasn't the only trick. Some vases were engineered with double chambers, an innocent outer shell and a secret inner one. The outer layer held water and flowers. The inner layer held poison. No label, no smell, nothing that would hint the vase was basically a weapon waiting to be triggered. How would it be used? Simple and terrifyingly brilliant. If the vase tipped, if the wrong person grabbed it, if it accidentally broke, the chambers mixed, the liquid splashed, and the poison activated. It was a weapon disguised as a clumsy accident. There are entire palace histories where assassinations were blamed on food, or wine, or illness, but the real culprit was sitting quietly on a shelf, beautiful, innocent, deadly. And here's the twist. These ideas didn't die with ancient kingdoms. They just changed materials. During World War II, resistance groups in Europe created floral vases with false bottoms. Pushed lightly, and a compartment popped open. Inside, maps, forged passports, weapon parts, radio codes, perfectly hidden in an object no soldier would smash, because who wants to explain why they destroyed someone's family heirloom? Later, intelligence agencies in the Cold War adapted the design again, this time using polymer resin, a material stable under heat but unstable under UV light, meaning if someone exposed the vase to sunlight for long enough, the interior compartment softened, twisted, warped, and everything inside became unreadable, a self-destruct device disguised as room decor. And today, this concept still survives in modern security tech. Ever heard of data vases? Most people haven't. They look like minimalist pottery pieces, smooth, white, luxurious, but inside is a resin-encased microvault that only opens with a specific magnetic pattern. Wrong pattern? Wrong magnet? Wrong movement? It doesn't open. It dissolves itself. Everything inside, gone. Like the vase was never anything but empty. We trust beauty. We trust fragility. But beauty has always been the perfect hiding place. And fragility makes an excellent alibi. But the next object? It wasn't meant to hide secrets or erase them. It was meant to lure people in. And once they touched it, they never walked away the same. Number 3, the candy that was never meant to be eaten. Let's talk about something sweet, colorful, innocent candy, the universal symbol of childhood joy, used at birthdays, holidays, and bribes from grandparents who swear they're not spoiling you. But beneath that sugary, smiling exterior is one of the darkest histories of any everyday object. Because for centuries, candy wasn't just a treat, it was bait, and sometimes a weapon. Let's start with something you've probably seen before. Bright, shiny Victorian candies, the ones that look like glass marbles dipped in sugar. Beautiful, right? Well, some of them really were dipped in something that looked like sugar, but wasn't. It was arsenic. And here's the horrifying twist. The shop owners didn't even know. See, during the 1800s, candy makers were often the lowest paid workers using the cheapest ingredients they could find. Flour, coloring, preservatives, all that stuff came from general chemical suppliers. Suppliers who sometimes stored arsenic in the same bags as confectioner's chalk. Same texture, same color, almost the same smell. One mistake, one scoop into the wrong barrel, and suddenly a batch of candy became lethal. Whole families were wiped out by a single bag of peppermint drops. Children died, clutching sweets that were supposed to brighten their day. Newspapers called it the poison candy scare, all because candy looked too innocent to suspect. But if that sounds like a tragic accident, don't worry, history gets much, much darker because criminals and spies saw opportunity. And in the early 1900s, candy became a delivery method for things far more sinister than sugar. A piece of chocolate could hide a capsule. A lollipop could conceal a needle. A stick of gum could contain, well, something that was definitely not mint. There's a documented case from the 1920s of a mob enforcer who carried sugar cubes, except his weren't for coffee. They were soaked in pure strychnine. He'd drop one into a drink, smile politely, and walk away. By the time anyone noticed, the cube had dissolved completely. No evidence, no trace, but that's small time compared to what intelligence agencies later cooked up. During the Cold War, the CIA experimented with poison candy designed for covert operation. One prototype looked like an ordinary chocolate bar. Break it open? Inside was a thin glass capsule filled with a toxin so potent that even a tiny crack could be fatal. But here's the twist. It wasn't meant to be given to a target. It was meant to be swallowed by agents. As a last resort, a sweet way to take a secret to the grave. They called it the candy that leaves no questions. Chilling, right? But candy's dark side wasn't always about poison. Sometimes it was about control. Let's jump to the 1950s, when psychologists ran experiments with behavioral conditioning treats. They would hand out sweets that looked normal, gumdrops, caramels, sour candies, but each piece had a different scent compound inside. Not dangerous, not poisonous, just carefully engineered to trigger moods, happiness, fear, calm, suspicion. Researchers wanted to see if they could steer emotions through something as simple as taste, and it worked. A little too well. One subject described it like this: "It felt like my feelings weren't mine." Another said, "I knew I was being manipulated, but I couldn't stop it." Governments quietly shut those experiments down, or so they claim, because decades later, candy companies began adding flavor enhancers, aroma binders, and taste stabilizers. All perfectly legal, all perfectly normal on paper, but we don't question them, do we? Because they're in candy. And candy is supposed to be harmless. But here's something almost no one realizes. The most dangerous candy of all wasn't eaten. It was worn. During World War II, women in resistance groups carried brooch candy, small, hard candy beads strung onto necklaces or hairpins. Pretty, harmless. But inside, each bead was a microfilm scroll. If captured, all they had to do was bite down. One crunch dash dash, and the message shattered into powder. Unrecoverable, just like the disappearing vases. Candy started as a treat, but history turned it into a disguise. A weapon, a tool for espionage, and sometimes an execution. And the next object? It doesn't hide poison. It doesn't hide secrets. It hides something worse. People. Number 4, the wardrobe that didn't hide clothes. It hid people. Let's move from candied, small, colorful, dangerous, to something much bigger. A wardrobe. Tall, quiet, heavy, the kind you'd open only to complain about not having anything to wear. Except this one was never designed for shirts or coats or anything with sleeves. It was designed to hide a human being or an entire family, or in some cases, something much worse. But let's start at the beginning. Furniture has always been the perfect hiding place. Why? Because nobody questions it. A soldier storms into a house, he looks under beds, behind curtains, inside crates, but a wardrobe? Just clothes, just hangers. At least, that's what they thought. Because in the 1600s, Europe, carpenters began building false back wardrobes. Elegant on the outside, dark wood, carved panels, polished handles, but behind the neat row of hanging cloaks was a second compartment, a secret, a space carefully measured so only someone desperate or very small could fit. Some families used them to hide valuables from thieves. Some used them to hide people from tax collectors. Some used them to hide lovers when the wrong husband came home early, but others use them for survival. During the Inquisition, during witch hunts, during purges and pogroms, wardrobes saved lives. People hid silently behind a layer of coats, breathing softly, praying no one opened the door too far. And sometimes it worked. Other times, not so much. In some recorded cases, soldiers discovered the secret panels, and instead of pulling people out, they simply lit the wardrobe on fire, turning a hiding place into a coffin. But the story doesn't end there, because centuries later, the wardrobe evolved into something even more deceptive. During World War II, resistance networks across Europe built safe wardrobes. Full-sized armoires with false walls, ventilation holes hidden behind carved patterns, and peepholes disguised as tiny decorative knots in the wood. Families used them to hide soldiers, fugitives, and refugees. Some stayed inside for minutes, some stayed for days. Imagine standing behind a thin wooden board while boots stomp across the floor outside your hiding place. Imagine hearing someone rifling through jackets just inches from your face. Imagine knowing that one sneeze, one breath too loud, could doom everyone in the house. Modern readers think of Narnia, where wardrobes lead to magical worlds. These wardrobes also led to another world, but one filled with fear, not fantasy. But here comes the twist most people never hear. It wasn't just good people using them. Criminals, smugglers, and kidnappers realized how effective furniture could be for concealment. Some wardrobes were built not to protect innocent lives, but to transport unwilling ones. Secret compartments, hidden restraints, sound dampening insulation, everything crafted so that even if you kicked and screamed, nobody outside would hear a thing. Police discovered entire trafficking operations where wardrobes were used as mobile prisons, rolled into trucks, carried into warehouses, left in basements where nobody cared about the noise. And not all victims were adults. Some wardrobes were built to hide children, not from soldiers, but from the very people who owned the furniture. Families who wanted to hide disabilities, hide pregnancies, hide shame. The darker you look into history, the more wardrobes become something you don't want in your room. Not because they're haunted, but because they were designed for secrets that were never meant to be discovered. But what's even stranger is how the concept survives today. Modern panic rooms? They're just high-tech versions of hidden wardrobes. Fingerprint locks instead of false panels. Reinforced steel instead of oak. Even some billionaires' homes contain closet rooms disguised as wardrobes. Seamless doors blending perfectly with clothing racks. One push on the right panel and the whole wall opens. Security professionals call them disappearing spaces, but historically, they were just wardrobes. And there's a reason people keep reinventing them. Hiding places aren't about safety. They're about fear. Fear of being found. Fear of being caught. Fear of whatever or whoever is searching for you. But our next object flips the idea completely, because it wasn't designed to hide anything. It was designed to follow you. Quietly, patiently, everywhere you went. Number 5. The mirror that was watching you back. Let's move from wardrobe, places meant to hide people, to something that hides nothing at all. A mirror, shiny, silent, honest, or so you think, because throughout history, mirrors weren't just tools for checking your hair. They were surveillance devices, control devices, and sometimes psychological weapons. Let's start in the one place mirrors should have been the safest, the home. Victorian parlors featured enormous wall mirrors, decorative, beautiful, but a significant number of them had hollow backs, not for aesthetics, for people. Servants stood silently behind them, watching gatherings through tiny peepholes drilled into the silvering, observing guests, listening to conversations, feeding information upstairs to the people who actually owned the house. Imagine sitting at a dinner party, laughing, drinking, and telling secrets without realizing a pair of eyes was only inches behind the glass. But that was just social espionage. Governments took it further, much further. In the 1800s, interrogation rooms sometimes used witch mirrors, a specialized kind of silvered glass that distorted faces, not enough for a person to notice immediately, but enough to unsettle them, make them look tired, guilty, or nervous. The goal? Break psychological defenses, make suspects feel watched, judged, weakened. Most people confessed without realizing they were being manipulated by a piece of furniture. But the true turning point came with the invention of something we now consider ordinary, the one-way mirror. It didn't start in modern police stations, it started in mental institutions. Doctors wanted to observe patients without being seen, study their habits, record episodes, watch them break down. Patients believed they were alone, but they weren't. They were test subjects in a paneled box. Some institutions even angled mirrors to distort a patient's height or face shape, making them question their own perception. Imagine waking up in a place where your reflection lied to you. That's how easy it is to break a mind. But mirrors weren't just tools of surveillance or manipulation. Sometimes they were used to lure people in. Travel back to the 17th century, where fairground curiosity mirrors became popular. They looked like harmless carnival mirrors, tall, polished, inviting you to come closer, but they contained mercury, raw, exposed, seeping through cracks in the backing. People would touch them, press their hands against a cool surface, leave fingerprints on the shining metal, and slowly poison themselves, all for a glimpse of a distorted smile. And the irony? The more a mirror warped your reflection, the more mercury it usually contained. People literally paid to be poisoned. But here's where the story tilts from tragic to terrifying, because mirrors weren't just dangerous in the past, they're dangerous right now. You've probably heard of hotel mirrors with secret rooms behind them. Well, those aren't myths. Some mirrors in certain hotels, nightclubs, and stores are designed with reversible mounts. You can rotate them like a door. A person can stand behind them comfortably, watching through the glass without being seen. And yes, some of those setups have been found with recording equipment hidden in walls, vents, and ceilings. But the most unsettling version comes from the smart homes of today. Smart mirrors, the kind that show you weather, calendar updates, skincare advice. What most people don't realize is that many smart mirrors contain microphones, sensors, Wi-Fi modules, and sometimes unlisted cameras, not external cameras, internal ones, facing you, analyzing posture, face angles, eye movements, and depending on the software, emotional responses. A mirror that doesn't show your reflection, it studies it. And once that data is collected, you have no control over where it goes. But here's the darkest twist of all. Some mirrors aren't supposed to reflect you. They're supposed to hide what's behind you. In some older houses, mirrors were used as secret doors to crawl spaces. People didn't know their bedroom mirrors were actually entrances used by burglars, smugglers, or in certain well-documented cases, the people who used to live in the house but never left. Imagine brushing your teeth, glancing up, and realizing the mirror is mounted on hinges, meaning it can open, meaning someone could be behind it, watching. You check tonight, don't you? That's all for today. Subscribe if you love discovering the dark side of everyday life. And remember, sometimes the things you trust the most have the deepest secrets.